exciting and most interesting, conversations in the world of football, especially in the Premier League and a little bit beyond the Premier League. My name is Joseph Faulkner, and it's time to get your game on. Yes, it's Game On, the show where we'll bring you all the excitement and the drama and everything that makes football something that you love to watch and we enjoy talking about. I'm in the company of very, very honorable people today. Eddie, as usual, retains his starting position on the team today. Eddie, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing well. First of all, why are you trying to intimidate us with your guns out? What's all what's all of this, right? You should have told us the dress
I,
code was this so that I would have come out with my own.
I decided to be in touch with my basketball side today, repping the Nigerian national team.
No, Kali, always great to be on the show and welcome everyone to Game On. And, thank you all for subscribing. And you know what to do. Please put your comments down below. Let us know what you like. Continue to subscribe. And we thank you for that. Share this with everyone that you know, people that you don't know, people that are owing you money, people that you're scoping, people that you're dating, everyone,
and
just
people
let
you are,
them
and
know.
people you're also owing.
Yes, people that you're also owing as well. So welcome to the show.
All right, awesome. We also have Femi, who's making the starting lineup today. Femi, you're welcome to the show.
Yes, I've been out injured for a while, but the physio room has been a great place to be. When you're not really doing much other than getting yourself massaged and everything, it's a great place to be. But yeah, restored to the starting lineup today, feeling fresh. Going to do a Jesus and score a brace today. So guys, look forward to 2 goals for me. I would heavily recommend you don't send the link to people you hold money because they will now start remembering that you hold them money. I think you should probably send them to the ones that hold you money so that they know you're still
They
there
might
trying
just
to get your money off them.
they might just pardon your debt for introducing them to something fantastic.
There you go. You see, Kali, you always have a special twist to everything. So I'm going to take that advice and recycle it. So please send it to the people that you owe money. This is going to get you a reprieve from them. So
You can
a
call me.
pleasure to be here. Love your top. But I thought I'll just, in the spirit of the season, I said I'll just wear something that talks about love as well. So I love my Padis. I love my Arsenal. I love everyone around me. So yes, let's get into it.
We love you too, bro. I'm just representing the Nigerian national basketball team. Just a solidarity to the team. But hey, guys, let's get into the show properly, and we're going to start from something that is a bit on the field and off the field. And I'm talking about racism, right? So racism is something that the world of football has been trying to fight for a long time. We've seen clubs, we've seen leagues, we've seen players, we've seen fans, try to take a stand against racism. They've done different things, shown different symbols, to show that they are against racism. But somehow racism has refused to leave not just football, sports in general. Our day-to-day life, we hear talks about racism everywhere. Now, during the week, in the course of the week, in the Champions League football match between Benfica and Inter Milan, Lukaku was allegedly racially abused all through the game. And then he stepped onto the field, scored a penalty kick, and shushed the crowd. He made a sign to the Benfica fans, shushing them up. And the referee issued him a yellow card. And my question is this. Shouldn't common sense, play a part in how referees react to players, especially black players who react to racial abuse? And I'm going to start with you, Eddie, on this one. Shouldn't common sense play a part in how referees deal with issues of players who react to being racially abused during game of football?
Yes, they should. The challenge is that with referees you always think that they have a lot of situational training, because one of the things that your job is on the referee is to actually look around the situation, and a lot of the decisions that you're making is subjective. How many times do we all look at a clip and say, oh, that was a foul, that was a penalty, the referee gave that as a penalty, maybe he did not give that as a penalty. And it seems like there are boundaries to where they apply some of those subjectiveness into their decision making. And yes, there's that rule about celebration and players getting a yellow card, but I've always understood that role to be when you go and directly engage the fans, or maybe you take off your shirt off, which I think is a very stupid rule. I think a lot of, pundits, a lot of past players, people in the game have always said that is a very, very stupid rule. And I think, when you look at the environment and you look at the hostile nature, I think that, as a referee, you really would not be brought up if you didn't actually take any action. If the referee, he's just done a celebration. And the funny thing about that is that he's done that celebration so many times, right? And there are other players that have done similar type celebration without having that same, sort of consequence. So, in the context of what happened in that game, it's almost rewarding the fans, by saying, well, actually, because the player did that, I'm giving him a yellow card. Some silly fans might be looking at it as validation for their behavior. So for me, that's why I just thought, it was very, very, and actually, if you just think about what has just recently happened, with Andy Robertson, and the assistant referee, where the PGMOL have actually said, you know what, we're not even going to do anything. We're just going to ignore that. They do have the ability to take some of those subjective type of, responses to an incident. So why can't the referee on the pitch? So for me, it's a little bit frustrating, because if you want to show zero abstinence or zero tolerance, to racism, it's not just about symbols. It's not about, creating some sort of slogan, people wear a patch, or something. You have to actually take real, actions that have an impact to the people that are doing this, because it's a behavior. And the only way to change behavior, you have to do something drastic. You can't just do a symbol signaling, to expect that the fans are going to actually change their behavior from it. So for me, they missed an opportunity to really send a strong message in that incident.
So I'm going to touch on something you mentioned, Eddie, and Femi, I wanted to come in here. Okay, so we're saying here that this it could look like a sort of validation for whatever the fans are doing. But I ask you the question, Femi, beyond the official on the pitch, the administrators of the sport itself, the FIFA, UEFA, the EPL, the La Liga, Bundesliga, the federations all across the world, and all of them, are they doing enough to actually even make it, clear to the referees that, come, you know what, we're actually all out against this? Because the state, off the air, we're talking about punishments, that have been meted out to clubs, that have their fans are fall victim, they're fall foul of this, racial abuse issue, and you ban the stadium for one game, fine them 15,000, 10,000 euros, and all of that. Are the federations themselves, the administrators of the game, are they even doing enough on their own part?
And I like that twist you gave it. And when it comes to administrators, I think the first thing you want to look at is, who are the people in charge of the game? Who are those administrators? And we all can try and be hunky-dory and say life is good, people are tolerant and everything. But the reality is, no disrespect, and I don't mean any disrespect, but also I want to call out the way it is. Most of those administrators are, of course, white-dominated groups. So at the end of the day, you only do things based on your experience. We're all a product of our environment and our experiences. If you haven't experienced racism, it's hard for you to bring out rules that will tackle it. In fact, unfortunately, within those groups, you would have people who genuinely in their hearts about those racist views. This week, we had a horrible thing happen in the UK. So there's a guy called Andrew Edwards. He's a councillor with the Conservative Party. He's a councillor in Pembrokeshire City Council in Wales. Now, this is an elected person who went, unfortunately, not knowing that it was being recorded, that every white person should have a black slave, either a male or a female black slave. It is not even excusing the women as well. It said either a male slave or a female black slave. And he said it's got nothing to do with color. They just believe they're a class ahead of us. That's what he said. And it was clear. Now, let me ask you, that's an elected person in office. That's an administrator, isn't it? Do you think he's going to make rules to punish the offender or the offended? Of course, he's going to make it to even punish the offended more. That's why the administrators have not thought it to say if there is any form of racist abuse and the player reacts, there will be no punishment. That's not hard to think of, is it? But if you have all those rules, then you will say, oh, hang on, this is sport. If they abuse you, you should keep quiet. Do you know how I feel when a fellow human being tells me I should be his slave? In 2023, do you know how our forefathers felt when they were being transported on ships to go and become slaves in places they didn't want to go to? And somebody still thinks and is recorded in, and in fact, the Conservative Party did not suspend him. He was the one, when everybody clearly knew he was the one, he referred himself to the Ombudsman, the Public Services Commission. So eventually, of course, because he reported himself, then he left the party, and then they said we've suspended him. But if they were really serious administrators, would they not have suspended him immediately that issue came out? Exactly. So I'm not going to just sit down here, Kali, and say it's all sweet and distant. Now, there are many good things in life, and I'm a believer in education, in working with people, in tolerance and everything. But those institutional challenges are set by the administrators, and it's hard for any referee to live above it. The referee should, you expect, but they always say that's the rule book. I'm only going by the rule book. The rule book needs to be changed. If you offend anybody, you should be the one that should be punished, not the players. That's my views, and I hope people can go away and we can challenge the status quo.
I think I reason with you in this part. Now let me play the devil's advocate a bit. Could there be, and Eddie, I wanted to react to this. Could there be people that are out there? You said, I agree totally that most of the people who run world football are largely white. That's why people have raised the question about the number of European teams that go to the World Cup as opposed to a number of teams from Asia, a number of teams from Africa, and the rest of them. And the simple explanation is that, okay, football in Europe is more sophisticated than these other parts of the world. Why don't we have the same number of equal number of participants, and then maybe another 5 slots or 10 slots, everybody around the world going to some different groups around the world, play themselves. If you qualify from there, fine. If you don't qualify from there, fine. People have suggested different things, to balance, the way it looks. But could it be that there are people who don't even understand, because Femi said something there that if you've not been in a situation, you can't totally understand or appreciate the level of that situation. Could that be that there are people, administrators, people who are the ones making the rules and all of that, who don't even understand why the noise about this racism? Yeah, anybody can insult you, because I've had people who come and tell you that even as white people, I've got white friends who tell me point blank that even as white people, people insult them, people do this, people do that, and all of them. Could that be that there are people who just think it's just normal insult? Why don't you just live above it?
Yeah, certainly. I think, there is a lot of normalization, of racist conversations, and guided under, banter, a little bit of, okay, we're just kind of taking the mickey out of you and things like that. But I think, racist conversations are very, very clear. I think, it's very distinct in the nature. When you start to address someone based on the context of how the person looks, especially the color of his skin, or from his background, that's clearly, a conversation about racism. So it's not a very divided or blurred topic, right? Everyone clearly knows, and exactly when you're being racist. Now, the impact that it has, to people is where, there's always the difference. And of course, if you're Caucasian or white background, you haven't lived some of the experiences. And so, we always talk about, creating the awareness and people, educating themselves, about, some of these things and what that means, to people. But ultimately, it's really about treating people equally, or people treating people fairly, just treating people as human beings, right? And when you start to have that whole, space about, I'm more superior than this person, or certainly because of the way that they look, I have a certain advantage over them. Once you're in that mindset, it's really, really difficult to shape. And of course, you're constantly around people that think exactly like you do. And we're always a product of the people that we communicate with. So just going back to, the context of football and, what the administrators could potentially do. And just to that point that you raised about the disparity in terms of, how certain parts of the world are seen in the context of football, it's really about investment, right? Europe has had, decades and decades of investment in football, over the years, whether that's into how they produce talent, into the promotion of it. And, at the end of the day, football is entertainment, and entertainment, there's a business element of it. If they want, the likes of Africa, because Africa is producing talent, they want the likes of Asia is producing talent, then the investment will go to it. Now, I will leave it up to debate about, how they show that investment. People can say, well, when we make a World Cup in a particular region, that's an opportunity for investment. But for me, that's just a one-time thing. It's like almost like giving someone food on the day and say, you know what, we're giving you food. That means you're never going to be hungry again. It's about, creating the structure in place to actually sustain the investment, so that if you really want to bring up the level of everyone that is playing football, which ultimately will be beneficial for the game, because if you really, we love football. We're talking about the English Premier League right now, one of the best leagues in the world. Why? Because it's competitive. Someone who is 13th in the table can beat someone who's first. Someone who's 20th in the table can beat someone who's first. And if you kind of extrapolate that across all the different continents, it brings more excitement, you would think, if the African nations, are doing so well, because there's investment, there's a lot of growth there, that they can actually compete, and then everyone starts to see them as a level playing field, right? And then I think the game will be a lot better, and maybe we'll start to overcome some of these challenges as well.
I need to pick it up from there. And if we wrap this up very quickly, this is how you just look at it. We talked about administrators. The FIFA World Cup for 2026. How many countries are in Africa? There are over 50 countries, about 54 countries in Africa. How many slots have they given us? 9. Now divide that by the number of European countries, who are just 44 officially by the United Nations, 44 countries. They've got 16 slots. Now compare 16 to 44 and 9 to 54. If you now look at North America, where there are only 23 or 24 countries, guess how many slots they have? They got 6 slots, which is very close to the African one. And they know those slots are going to go to the richer countries. But in South America, where they have a lot of countries, but only a few decent ones, they've got 6 slots as well. All I'm saying is, it's not rocket science, and just that's what it is just described. If you're in charge of it, if you don't feel you're superior to somebody, you would not have 54 countries compete for 9 slots and 44 compete for 16. It doesn't work that way, does it? And let's be fair, in Europe, there are only a few countries that are, say, advanced or developed. I've lived in Europe for nearly 20 years now. If you take away the west of Europe, I mean, with every respect to Romania or Bulgaria or any of those countries, they're not any better than Ghana or Nigeria or any of those. But guess what? They have more slots than we have. So if you're not inherently thinking that you're better, you are on a higher class like Andrew Edwards thought, then you're not going to have 54 countries compete for fewer slots and fewer countries compete for more slots. It's just the way they're thinking it. It's the way they think that they're naturally just better. So we can be here all night. You will continue to find more reasons why racism is an institution that it's hard to take away, because the people who are there don't experience it. So they think it's normal.
And probably don't think, excuse me, they probably don't think it's a big deal. But then, one of the things I say all the time, and every platform I found myself, even though some people some people get tired, of talking about it and seeing no action. But I'm not going to get tired, and I don't think people should get tired, of
No,
talking
never.
about this.
Absolutely.